There's an audio file in the KGB archives that no one is supposed to listen to more than once. It's labeled at Test Recording, Facility 19, January 1979, and it runs for exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. For the first 3 minutes, you hear nothing unusual, just a man's voice speaking clearly into a microphone, reciting a simple phrase.
This is Senior Technician Dmitri Lebedev, conducting acoustic test number 1.
Then he claps his hands once, a sharp crack that echoes off concrete walls. The echo lasts for 43 seconds. Then it starts getting louder. By the time the recording ends, the echo is so loud it distorts the tape, and underneath it, you can hear Dmitri Lebedev screaming for someone to make it stop. The file notes indicate he was found 3 hours later, sitting on the floor with his hands over his ears, whispering the same phrase over and over. It's still going. Facility 19 was a research station built into the Ural Mountains in 1977, designed to study acoustic phenomena for military applications. The Soviets were interested in sound as a weapon, frequencies that could disorient, incapacitate, or kill without leaving visible wounds. They'd built similar facilities before, sterile concrete bunkers filled with speakers and recording equipment, technicians mapping the physics of noise. Facility 19 was supposed to be routine, just another station in the network. But in January 1979, something went wrong in Test Chamber C. The room was a perfect cube, 8 meters on each side, walls lined with acoustic foam to absorb sound and prevent echoes. It was specifically designed to be silent, to swallow noise completely. Instead, it started reflecting sound that shouldn't have been there, sound that wouldn't stop. The first anomaly was recorded on January 8th. A junior technician named Irina Sokolova was calibrating microphones in Chamber C when she noticed the room was humming. Not the usual electrical hum from equipment. This was lower, resonant, like the sound of a glass being rubbed with a wet finger. She checked all the equipment, shut down every device, killed power to the entire chamber. The hum continued. She stood in the center of the room, perfectly still, holding her breath, and the hum matched her heartbeat exactly. When her pulse quickened, the hum rose in pitch. When she held her breath, it dropped.
Bioacoustic feedback of unknown origin.
She filed a report describing the phenomenon with those words. Her supervisor dismissed it as equipment malfunction and scheduled a full diagnostic check. The diagnostic team entered Chamber C on January 10th. 3 technicians, 2 engineers, and a supervising officer named Major Konstantin Petrov. They spent 6 hours running tests, recording baseline noise levels, checking every surface for vibration or structural defect. Everything was normal. The chamber was acoustically dead, exactly as designed. Then Major Petrov suggested a simple experiment. He would speak a single word, and they would measure how long it took for the sound to dissipate completely. He stood in the center of the room, surrounded by microphones, and said one word, "Test." The word echoed once, twice, 3 times. Normal acoustic behavior for a hard-walled room. Then it echoed a 4th time, a 5th, a 6th. Each echo was slightly different, as if the word was being spoken by different voices, different mouths. The technicians looked at each other, confused, waiting for it to stop. It didn't stop. By the time they evacuated the chamber, the echo had layered itself into a continuous drone, dozens of overlapping voices all saying "test" in different tones, different rhythms, building into a wall of sound that physically hurt to hear. They sealed the door and monitored it from outside. The recording equipment inside registered that the sound continued for 11 hours before finally fading to silence. When they opened the chamber again, everything was intact. No damage, no explanation. But there was something new written on the wall in condensed moisture, as if someone had traced letters in fog. "We heard you." No one had been inside to write it. Let me read you Major Petrov's report from that evening.
Request immediate cessation of all acoustic testing in Chamber C. Phenomenon exceeds understood parameters of sound reflection. Evidence suggests chamber is not reflecting sound, but storing it, accumulating acoustic energy from unknown source. Recommend sealing chamber and declaring facility compromised.
His recommendation was ignored. Instead, Moscow sent specialists, acoustic physicists, engineers, a team from the Ministry of Defense interested in weaponizing whatever they'd found. If Chamber C could store sound indefinitely, if it could amplify and repeat audio without power or equipment, that was something worth understanding, worth exploiting. The specialists arrived on January 15th and immediately began aggressive testing. They wanted to map the limits of the phenomenon, to understand how much sound the chamber could hold and what happened when it reached capacity. They pumped recorded audio into the room, music, speech, white noise, and measured what came back out. The results were consistent but impossible. The chamber didn't just echo sound, it remembered it. A recording played at 10 in the morning would echo faintly at 10 in the evening, exactly 12 hours later. A voice from Tuesday would overlap with a voice from Wednesday, the two conversations bleeding into each other across time. One of the physicists described it as temporal acoustic retention. Sound delayed not by distance but by duration, as if the room existed slightly out of sync with the rest of the world. On January 18th, they attempted a more complex test. They placed a speaker in the center of Chamber C and played a recording of a metronome. A simple, steady tick, tick, tick at 60 beats per minute. The plan was to play it for exactly 1 minute, then shut it off and measure how long the echo lasted. They played the recording. 60 seconds of metronome ticks, clean and precise. Then they shut off the speaker and waited. The ticking continued. Not an echo, not a reflection. The sound was identical in volume and clarity to the original recording, as if the speaker was still playing. They checked the equipment 3 times. The speaker was off, unplugged, completely inert, but inside Chamber C, the metronome kept ticking. It ticked for 48 hours without variation, 60 beats per minute, never slowing, never stopping. Then, on the 3rd day, it started to speed up. The lead physicist, Dr. Anatoly Kurkov, documented what happened next in his personal notes. The metronome accelerated gradually, 60 beats per minute becoming 70, then 80, then 100. It climbed past the threshold of human perception, the individual ticks blurring into a single high-pitched whine. Then it collapsed back down to a slow, irregular rhythm, 50 beats per minute, then 40, then 30. But it wasn't regular anymore. The timing was off, inconsistent, as if something was struggling to maintain the pattern. Dr. Kurkov wrote,
The sound is deteriorating, not fading, degrading, like a recording played too many times. losing fidelity with each repetition. But there is no tape. There is no mechanism. The sound is eating itself.
They decided to enter the chamber while the metronome was still audible. A single technician, Senior Lieutenant Oleg Fedorov, volunteered to go inside with a handheld recording device and document what he experienced. He entered Chamber C at 1400 hours on January 21st, and the door was sealed behind him per safety protocol. The observation window showed him standing in the center of the room, device raised, turning slowly to face each wall. The metronome was still ticking. Slower now, maybe 20 beats per minute, erratic and stuttering. Fedorov spoke into his recorder, describing the sound, the acoustics, the strange pressure he felt in his ears. Then he stopped moving. He stood perfectly still, head tilted, as if listening to something the external microphones couldn't pick up. After 30 seconds, he turned to face the observation window and mouthed a single word: "Help." The door was opened immediately. Fedorov stumbled out, pale and shaking, clutching the recording device against his chest. He wouldn't speak, wouldn't respond to questions, just shook his head violently whenever anyone tried to take the recorder from him. They brought him to the medical wing and sedated him lightly, enough to calm him down but keep him conscious. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. He said the metronome wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from inside his head. He said he could feel each tick as a physical sensation, a small pressure behind his eyes, and between the ticks he could hear something else. Voices, dozens of them, all talking at once but too quiet to understand. He said one of the voices was his own, and it was saying things he hadn't said yet. They reviewed the recording he'd made inside the chamber. For the first minute, it's exactly what you'd expect. His voice describing the room, the temperature, the quality of the sound. Then there's a pause, and you can hear him breathing, slow and steady. Then his voice comes back, but it's different. Flatter, emotionless, like someone reading from a script.
This is Senior Lieutenant Oleg Fedorov. I have been inside Chamber C for 16 hours. The sound will not stop. I cannot leave. If you are hearing this, do not enter. The room is not empty.
The recording timestamp shows this section was captured 1 minute and 40 seconds after he entered. He was inside for less than 2 minutes total. He couldn't have been there for 16 hours. But his voice on the tape insisted he had been. Fedorov was removed from duty and placed under psychiatric observation. Within 3 days, he stopped sleeping, claiming that every time he closed his eyes, he could hear the metronome still ticking, counting down to something he couldn't name. On the 4th day, he was found in his quarters, unresponsive, staring at the ceiling. His heart was beating at exactly 60 beats per minute, perfectly regular, no variation. It stayed that way for 6 hours, then suddenly accelerated to 120 beats per minute and held there. Medical staff couldn't slow it down. Drugs had no effect. His body simply ignored them. His heart was following the pattern of the metronome from Chamber C, cycling through the same rhythm the sound had followed. He died of cardiac arrest on January 28th. The autopsy noted severe damage to the inner ear structures, as if he'd been exposed to sustained high-volume noise. But he'd only been in the chamber for 2 minutes, and the metronome had never been loud. After Fedorov's death, Facility 19 was ordered to cease all testing immediately. Chamber C was to be sealed permanently, welded shut, no one in or out. But before they could begin the sealing process, something happened that changed everything. On the night of January 30th, the chamber started broadcasting. Every speaker in the facility, every radio, every piece of audio equipment activated simultaneously and began playing the same sound. A human voice, male, speaking Russian with a calm, clinical tone.
This is Senior Technician Dmitri Lebedev. I am conducting acoustic test number 1.
Then he clapped his hands. The clap echoed through the entire facility, bouncing off walls, cascading through hallways, overlapping with itself until it became a physical force. Windows cracked. Light fixtures shattered. Personnel reported feeling the sound as vibration in their bones, their teeth, the fluid in their eyes. And it didn't stop. The echo continued, growing louder, and beneath it you could hear Dmitri Lebedev screaming, the same screams from the original recording made 3 weeks earlier. But Dmitri Lebedev wasn't in the facility anymore. He'd been transferred to a hospital in Moscow after the first incident. Hadn't been near Chamber C in days. Yet his voice was everywhere, live and immediate, as if he were standing in every room at once. The facility director ordered a full evacuation. 73 personnel, scientists, technicians, security staff, maintenance workers, fled into the January cold, leaving equipment running, doors open, lights blazing. They gathered at a safe distance and watched as Facility 19 seemed to pulse, the windows glowing and dimming in rhythm with the echoing clap. Then, at 0300 hours, everything stopped. Total silence. The lights stayed on, the building stood intact, but the sound was gone. A reconnaissance team entered at dawn and found the facility completely empty. No damage, no bodies, no sign of disturbance. Every piece of equipment was right where it should be. Chamber C was still sealed. But in every room, on every wall, the same message was written in what looked like condensed moisture.
It's still going.
Moscow sent a containment team with orders to sanitize the facility and retrieve all research data. They worked quickly, boxing files, copying recordings, dismantling equipment. When they reached Chamber C, they found the door had been opened from the inside. The welding marks were intact, the seal unbroken, but the door hung open as if someone had unlocked it and walked out. Inside the chamber, the acoustic foam had been torn from the walls in long strips, piled in the center of the room. And in that pile, they found objects that shouldn't have been there. Personal items belonging to people who'd worked in the facility. A wristwatch belonging to Major Petrov. A pen with Dr. Kirchhoff's initials engraved on it. A wedding ring that matched the description of the one worn by Irina Sokolova. None of these people were missing. They'd all evacuated safely, were all accounted for. But their possessions were inside a sealed chamber they swore they'd never entered. The facility was officially closed on February 15, 1979. The official report cited structural instability and equipment failure as the reason for abandonment. All personnel were reassigned to other projects, scattered across the Soviet Union, forbidden from discussing their work at Facility 19 under penalty of prosecution. The research data was classified and buried in archives where it would take decades and multiple clearances to access. Chamber C was filled with concrete. Not sealed, filled completely. Every cubic centimeter packed solid to ensure nothing could resonate inside it ever again. Or, at least that was the plan. But here's what troubles me. There are reports, scattered and inconsistent, from people who've been near the site of Facility 19 in the years since it closed. Hikers, hunters, occasional researchers studying the Ural Mountains. They describe hearing sounds that don't match the environment. A voice speaking Russian, reciting technical jargon. A metronome ticking somewhere in the distance. The echo of a single clap, rolling through the valleys with no source. Most dismiss it as wind, imagination, the brain finding patterns in random noise. But some of them report something else. They say that when they hear the sounds, they feel compelled to follow them, to track the source. And the sounds always lead in the same direction, toward a concrete bunker half buried in snow, a building that officially doesn't exist anymore. In 1987, a maintenance crew was sent to the site to inspect the structural integrity of the concrete fill in Chamber C. They drilled a small bore hole to insert a camera and check for settling or cracks. When they pulled the camera back out, the microphone had recorded something. 4 minutes and 17 seconds of audio. Dmitri Lebedev introducing himself, clapping his hands, the echo building to a scream. The exact same recording from 1979, played back perfectly, as if it had been waiting inside the concrete for 8 years, preserved in solid stone like a fossil. The crew sealed the borehole immediately and recommended that the site never be disturbed again. The recommendation was accepted. There's a page in the file, dated 1992, written by someone whose name is redacted. It's a memo addressed to no one, filed under no official category, just a piece of paper slipped between incident reports.
Chamber C is not storing sound. It is creating echoes of events that haven't finished happening. The sound we recorded in 1979 is still occurring, somewhere, in some version of that room that exists parallel to our own. Every time we listen to the recordings, every time we speak about it, we feed it. The echo grows stronger. Recommend complete information suppression and memory erasure protocols for all surviving personnel.
There's a handwritten note at the bottom in different ink. Request denied. We need to understand it first. But they never did understand it. The files are full of theories. Dimensional acoustics, temporal sound loops, quantum audio retention, but no conclusions, no answers. Just data and observation and the slow realization that they'd built a room that broke the rules of how sound behaves. A room that didn't echo what you said, but what you were going to say, what you were afraid to say, what you were thinking but couldn't voice. A room that listened so well it heard things that hadn't happened yet. The last entry in the file is dated 2003. It's a brief note from a junior archivist who was digitizing old audio recordings. He wrote that while converting the original Dmitri Lebedev tape to a digital format, he noticed something in the background noise. Behind the clap, behind the echo, behind the screaming, there was another sound. Very faint, almost inaudible. It sounded like breathing. Multiple people breathing in sync, dozens of them, maybe more. He enhanced the audio and isolated the breathing. When he played it back, he realized the breathing pattern matched the rhythm of the metronome from the later tests. 60 breaths per minute, steady and mechanical. He wrote, "I don't think the room was empty when Lebedev made his recording. I think they were already there, waiting." The file ends with that sentence. No follow-up, no investigation, no official response, just silence. And somewhere in the Ural Mountains, there's a concrete bunker filled with stone. And inside that stone, there's a room that's still listening, still echoing, still counting down the rhythm of something we were never supposed to hear. The locals say that on cold January nights, when the wind is low and the snow muffles everything, you can hear it if you stand in the right spot. A voice reciting technical data. A metronome ticking out of sync with itself. The echo of a clap that's been repeating for 45 years and refuses to fade. I don't know if that's true, but the recordings exist, the reports are real. And somewhere in the archives, there's a sealed box labeled Facility 19. Audio files do not duplicate. Inside that box, there are dozens of tapes, each one containing a different test, a different voice, a different sound that refused to stop. And on every tape in the background, if you listen carefully, you can hear the same thing. Breathing, synchronized, waiting. As if Chamber C isn't empty at all, but full of something we can't see, something that only exists in sound. Something that's been trying to speak to us for decades, one echo at a time, patient and relentless and growing louder every year. The room is still there, the sound is still going, and the echo remembers everything.